The accountant called and said your son has been forging your signature on checks for months. I stayed calm and asked for copies of everything. That night, my son came over for dinner like nothing happened. I smiled and served his favorite meal. Then I placed the folder on the table and his face went white. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching, get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The warm, sweet scent of cinnamon and baked peaches filled my kitchen. I smoothed the final lattice strip over the cobbler, the one he always requested for his Sunday visits. The oven timer had just clicked off when the phone on the wall rang, its old-fashioned trill sharp against the afternoon quiet. I wiped my hands on my apron, a faded blue one with embroidered daisies, and picked up the receiver. Ellie Vance speaking. "Eleanor, it's Robert Meekum." My accountant's voice was there, but the tone was not. It was stripped of its usual pleasant, professional cadence. It was flat and careful. "Robert, hello. I was just finishing up a cobbler." I smiled, expecting the usual brief, friendly exchange about the weather or his grandchildren. He did not return the pleasantry. "Eleanor, I need you to come into the office, today, if possible." I glanced at the clock. It was after 4 on a Friday. Today, is something wrong with the quarterly filings? I thought everything was in order. A pause traveled down the line, a silence filled with something I could not yet name. "It's not about the filings. It's about some discrepancies in your personal checking account. I found some items that require your immediate attention." Discrepancies. The word was sterile, but the way he said it gave it weight. "What kind of discrepancies?" "I would prefer to show you in person." His voice softened just a fraction. "Can you come now?" The cobbler was cooling on the stovetop. My son was coming for dinner in 2 days. "I can be there in 20 minutes. "I'll wait for you." The drive to Robert's office was a series of familiar turns I made without conscious thought. My hands were steady on the wheel. I noticed the precise angle of the late afternoon sun on the manicured lawns of my neighborhood. I noted the children's bicycles left in a driveway. The normalcy of the scene was a stark contrast to the cold knot forming in my stomach. Discrepancies. Robert Meekum was a cautious man, not an alarmist. He had handled my finances since James passed, a decade of meticulous stewardship. His office was in a quiet brick building. His secretary had gone home for the day. The reception area was dim, and the door to his private office stood open, a pool of lamplight spilling onto the carpet. He stood as I entered, his face grave. He did not offer coffee. "Eleanor, please sit." I sat in the leather chair facing his large, orderly desk. He remained standing for a moment, then took his own seat. He opened a plain manila folder that lay centered before him. He did not speak immediately. He adjusted his glasses and slid a single sheet of paper across the polished wood toward me. It was a copy of a canceled check. My check, from my checking account. The amount was for $2,500. The payee was a company I did not recognize. The signature at the bottom was mine. Except it was. I stared at it. The loops of the E, the slant of the V, it was a good copy. A very good copy. It looked like my handwriting. But I knew the rhythm of my own hand, the slight pressure I applied on the downstroke of the N. This signature had a hesitation, a tiny tremble in the line that a forger might mistake for character, but I knew was uncertainty. "I don't know this company," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "I did not write this check." Robert nodded slowly. He did not look surprised. He slid another sheet forward. Another check. $1,500 made out to a different entity, the same signature. Then another, for $1,800. He laid out 5 in total. They spanned the last 4 months. The amounts varied, but they were all substantial. The total was just over $9,000. "I was reconciling your statements for the first quarter," Robert said, his words measured and clear. "These payments were flagged by my software as irregular. The pattern was consistent. The amounts are always under $3,000, likely to avoid triggering automatic holds. The payees are all small LLCs, shell corporations, essentially, untraceable by design." He leaned forward slightly. "The signatures are forgeries, Eleanor, very skilled but forgeries. Someone has been systematically draining your account." The air in the room felt thin. I looked from the papers to Robert's concerned face and back to the papers. The numbers were just numbers. The signatures were just ink. The meaning, however, landed with a physical force. Someone with access to my checkbook. Someone who knew my routines. Someone who could practice my signature. There was only one person. The realization did not arrive as a shock, but as a dreadful, settling certainty. It was the final piece of a puzzle I had not known I was assembling. The vague unease I'd felt last month when I couldn't find my spare checkbook. Marcus's new watch, which he said was a lucky find at a pawn shop. His recent, vague talk about investment opportunities. It all slid into place with a quiet, terrible click. Humiliation washed over me first, hot and private. I had been fooled. In my own home. The violation was intimate and profound. This was not a burglary. It was a betrayal performed in slow motion with my own pen, mimicking my own hand. Then the heat receded, leaving something cold and solid in its wake. I felt my posture straighten in the chair. My fingers, which had gone cold, steadied. "Who else knows about this?" I asked. My voice was calm. "No one. I called you as soon as I confirmed my suspicions. I want copies of everything, every check, every statement that shows a withdrawal I did not authorize, a complete record." "Of course, I've already prepared them." He reached for a second, thicker folder on his desk. "Alina, I must advise you, this is a serious crime. You should consider contacting the authorities." I looked at the forged signature again. The childish pride I'd felt when a 6-year-old Marcus had first scrawled his own name flashed before my eyes. I pushed it away. "Not yet, Robert. First, I need to understand the full scope. Please make copies of everything for me. For now, that is all I will do." He hesitated but nodded. He was a professional and he respected my wishes. He assembled the copies while I sat in silence. I did not cry. I did not rage. I watched my own hand as I reached out to take the folder from him. It did not shake. I placed the folder in my large handbag. We exchanged a few more necessary words about securing my accounts, about changing passwords. His advice was technical, and I listened, committing each step to memory. Then I thanked him, walked out to my car, and drove home. In my driveway, I turned off the engine. The house awaited me, quiet and full of the lingering smell of peach cobbler. I did not go inside immediately. I sat in the silent car, the folder a heavy presence on the passenger seat. I replayed the last few months. The Sunday dinners, his smiles, his hugs, the requests for small loans always paid back, which had now clearly been a test, a softening of the ground. The hurt was a vast, dark ocean, but I would not drown in it. I took a slow, deliberate breath, filling my lungs, then another. The initial sting of humiliation was crystallizing into something else, a cold, clear plan. He thought I was an easy mark, a soft-hearted mother blinded by love. He had forgotten who he was dealing with. The woman who had budgeted her way through college, who had navigated probate and insurance and mortgage payments alone, who had built this quiet, secure life from the ground up, brick by careful brick. I finally opened the car door. The first thing I would do was remove the cobbler from the stovetop and place it in the freezer. Sunday dinner would proceed as planned, but nothing else would. The cobbler remained in the freezer for 2 days. On Sunday morning, I took it out to thaw on the counter. I prepared the rest of the meal as I always did. A small rosemary chicken, roasted potatoes, green beans with almonds. The rituals were automatic, my hands performing their tasks while my mind operated on a separate, silent track. I set the table in the dining room, using the good linen napkins and the everyday china. The house filled with the familiar, comforting smells of a family dinner. It was a performance, and I was both actor and director. I had to observe him, to see if the weight of what he had done showed on him. I needed to know if the son I raised was still in there, buried beneath this stranger who could forge my name. At precisely 1 o'clock, his car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the kitchen window. He emerged, smiling, holding a bottle of wine. He looked the same. His stride was easy, confident. He wore a new jacket, a stylish dark wool one I hadn't seen before. I met him at the door. "Mom," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. He smelled of his usual cologne. Something smells amazing. Just the usual, I said, taking the wine. Thank you, dear, come in. He moved through the house with a sense of ownership, hanging his jacket on the hall tree. His eyes scanned the living room, a casual glance that now felt like an audit. Did he note the placement of the television? The silver frame on the mantel? I led him to the kitchen. Can I help with anything? He asked, the picture of a thoughtful son. You can open the wine. Glasses are on the counter. I turned to stir the green beans. How was your week? Busy, you know, the usual grind. He uncorked the bottle with practiced ease. We're pitching a new client on Tuesday. Big account. Could mean a nice bonus. That's wonderful, I said, my voice even. I did not ask what the bonus might be used for. I portioned the chicken onto the platter. And how's the car running? Perfectly, no more issues since that last tune-up. He poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to me. His eyes met mine. They were clear, warm, no shadow of guilt, no flicker of unease, just the same familiar hazel eyes I had looked into for 32 years. It was the most devastating part. The betrayal lived inside me like a cold stone, but in him it had left no visible mark. He was completely at ease. We sat down to eat. He complimented the food. He told a long, amusing story about a coworker's disastrous presentation. He asked about my book club. The conversation flowed with the practiced rhythm of countless Sunday dinners. I laughed at the appropriate moments. I asked follow-up questions. I was the mother he expected. But I was also watching. I noted the smooth way he evaded any specific question about his finances. When I mentioned I was thinking of finally getting the porch repainted, he nodded absently and said, "Yeah, you should. It's looking a little worn," before quickly steering the talk back to his potential bonus. I saw the casual entitlement in that response. The assumption that my home's maintenance was a given, a backdrop to his own narrative. Halfway through the meal, a memory surfaced, unbidden. Him at the kitchen table, age 7, practicing his cursive. His tongue poked out in concentration as he formed the looping letters of his name. "Look, Mom, it looks just like yours." I had praised him, pinning the sheet to the refrigerator. Now that same careful imitation had been turned against me. The skill I had encouraged had been weaponized. "You're quiet today, Mom," he said, reaching for another potato. "Everything okay?" The question was perfunctory, polite. He did not truly expect a problem. In his world, I was a constant, a source, not a person with complexities that could include discovery. "Just a little tired," I said, offering a small, weary smile. "I was going through some old paperwork this week. It's always a chore." A faint line appeared between his brows for a second, then vanished. "You should let me help you with that stuff sometime. I can organize your files digitally, take some of the load off." The generosity of the offer, layered over the theft, was breathtaking. "That's kind of you," I said, "but I have a system. It works for me." He shrugged, accepting another piece of chicken. "Suit yourself, just offering." After dessert, the peach cobbler, which he ate with genuine pleasure, he helped me clear the table. As he carried the plates into the kitchen, I remained in the dining room, slowly folding my napkin. My eyes fell on the sideboard in the living room. On it, partially tucked beneath a stack of gardening catalogs, was the manila folder Robert Meekum had given me. I had left it there deliberately this morning. A test. Marcus walked back through the living room, heading to the bathroom. His gaze swept the room, passing over the sideboard, over the folder, without a pause. No recognition, no startled glance. It was just another piece of the domestic landscape, invisible to him. He didn't see it as a threat because he didn't believe I was capable of posing one. That was the moment my last, fragile hope dissolved. The man eating my food, laughing in my home, felt no anxiety about the evidence of his crime sitting in plain sight. His comfort was absolute. His assumption of my ignorance was complete. He left an hour later, with a hug and a promise to call soon. I stood at the door, waving as he backed out of the driveway. The smile stayed on my face until his car turned the corner. I closed the door. The house was silent again, heavy with the remnants of the meal and the ghost of his presence. I walked into the living room and picked up the folder. The normalcy of the dinner had not softened the betrayal. It had underscored it. The warmth of the kitchen, the smell of rosemary, the sound of his laughter, they were all the setting for a profound deception. I had looked for guilt and found only familiarity. I had looked for a son and found a skilled performer. The performance was over. My decision, which had been forming like ice since Friday afternoon, was now solid, immovable. He would be back. He would ask for something again, a loan, a co-signature, some new need. And when he did, I would be ready. The loving mother had served her final Sunday dinner. The strategist had taken her place. I carried the folder to my small desk in the corner of the room, sat down, and opened it. The first step was not confrontation. The first step was understanding the full depth of the hole he had dug. I turned to the first page of Robert's meticulous report, and I began to read. The report from Robert Meekum was a map of my own violation. I spent the rest of Sunday and all of Monday morning studying it. He had provided a spreadsheet, each fraudulent check listed with its date, number, amount, and the forged payee. He had also included copies of my bank statements, the unauthorized withdrawals highlighted in yellow. Seeing them lined up in chronological order was critical. The first one was small, just $700 over 6 months ago. A test. When that cleared without comment, the amounts grew and the frequency increased. The most recent was dated just 3 weeks prior. The total was $9,420. It was not a life-altering sum, not in the grand scheme, but it was the principle. It was the stealth. It was the fact that he had looked me in the eye over all those Sunday dinners while systematically picking my pocket. I closed the folder. Knowledge was the foundation. Now I needed a plan and an ally. I called Jerry Whitman on Monday afternoon. We had been friends since our first secretarial jobs out of high school. She had a voice that could cut glass and a loyalty that was absolute. "Ellie, I was just thinking about you. What's new?" "I need to talk," I said. My tone must have conveyed everything because hers changed instantly. "Name the place and time." We met the next day for lunch at the Green Apple, a quiet cafe we'd frequented for years. I arrived first and secured a booth in the back. When Jerry walked in, she scanned the room, saw me, and her sharp eyes narrowed. She could read my face like a book. She slid into the booth, shedding her light coat. "Okay, what happened? Is it Marcus? Is he hurt?" "No," I said. "He's not hurt." I waited until the server had taken our drink orders. I placed the manila folder on the table between us. "He's been stealing from me for at least 6 months." Jerry's face went still, then a flush crept up her neck. "Stealing how?" "Forged checks from my personal checking account." I opened the folder and turned it toward her. I pointed to the summary page with the total. Just over $9,000. She did not reach for the papers immediately. She stared at the number, then at me. Her jaw tightened. "That little bastard." The words were low and venomous. "That ungrateful, sneaking little bastard." Her eyes flashed up to mine. "Have you called the police?" "Not yet." "Why in God's name not? Ellie, this is a felony. He belongs in a cell." "He's my son," I said, my voice quiet. "He's a thief." Jerry's voice rose, and she consciously lowered it, leaning forward. "He stole from his own mother. He forged your name. There is no excuse for that. None." "I know that," I said, meeting her furious gaze. "But charging him with a felony doesn't get my money back. It destroys what's left of our relationship. It potentially destroys his future. And it turns my private humiliation into a public spectacle." Jerry sat back, crossing her arms. "So what are you going to do? Forgive him? Write it off as a lesson?" "No." I took a sip of water. "I am going to secure everything. Then I am going to confront him, and then I am going to offer him a choice." Jerry listened, her expression skeptical but attentive, as I laid out the steps I had formulated. "First, I am moving the majority of my funds to a new account at a different bank. Today, the existing account will be left open with a minimal balance. Second, I have an appointment with a lawyer tomorrow, not to prosecute, but to understand my options. I need to know the legal weight of what I have and what a notarized repayment agreement would entail. Third, I am going to secure all my important documents, the deed, the car title, my insurance policies, in a safe deposit box. Fourth, I am changing every password for every online account, and I will no longer keep a physical checkbook in the house." I spoke calmly, itemizing each action as if it were a grocery list. Jerry's anger began to settle into a focused intensity. She nodded slowly as I continued. When all of that is done, and only when I am completely secure, I will confront him. I will show him this evidence. I will tell him what I have done to lock him out, and then I will present him with a choice. He can agree to a formal legal repayment plan with interest and enroll in financial counseling with proof of completion, or I will take this folder to the police. Jerry was silent for a long moment. The server brought our salads. We did not touch them. "That's cold, Ellie," she said finally, but there was a note of admiration in her voice. "It's necessary," I replied. "This isn't about vengeance. It's about restoration. I need my money returned. I need my safety restored. And if there is any part of the son I raised left in him, he needs to learn that actions have consequences. A courtroom would teach him about consequences, but it wouldn't teach him about integrity. This way, there's a chance." Jerry reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her grip was firm. "He doesn't deserve a chance." "I know. I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for me. I need to know I handled this as the person I am, not the monster he tried to make me into." She let go of my hand and finally picked up her fork. "Okay, then I'm in. What do you need from me?" "Right now, just this, to listen, to tell me if my plan has holes. Later, I may need you to be a witness. When I confront him, I don't want to be alone with him. I'd like you there in the other room, perhaps." "Done," she said without hesitation. She stabbed a piece of lettuce. "I still think you should let me slap him silly first." A faint, real smile touched my lips for the first time in days. "Noted." We ate then, the conversation shifting to practicalities. Jerry, with her legal background, had insights on what to ask the lawyer. She recommended the bank where she did her business. Our lunch lasted over 2 hours. When we parted outside the cafe, she hugged me tightly. "You're the strongest person I know, Ellie Vance. He has no idea what's coming." I walked to my car, the folder tucked under my arm. The emotional turbulence of discovery had passed. The performative normalcy of Sunday dinner was over. I had transitioned from the victim to the strategist. The path was clear, each step logical and deliberate. My heart ached, a dull, constant pain, but it was compartmentalized. It was in a room I had locked for now. The rest of me was focused on the tasks ahead. My first stop was the new bank. I had an appointment to open an account in 1 hour. The process of reclamation had begun. Opening the new bank account was a straightforward transaction. I sat across from a polite young manager, signed the necessary forms with my authentic signature, and initiated the transfer of all but $500 from my old checking account. The process took less than an hour. When I left, I had a new debit card and a checkbook for the new account locked in the glove compartment of my car. The old checkbook, the compromised one, I left in a drawer at home. It was bait now, for a trap that was already sprung. The real work began at my desk at home. That evening, after a simple dinner, I turned on the single brass lamp and created a workspace. I assembled Robert Meekum's folder, my own file box of past bank statements, a fresh legal pad, and a pen. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I started with the oldest statement in my possession, from over a year ago, and began to compare it line by line to Robert's highlighted records. The $700 check was indeed the first. I found its match on my statement. I had missed it at the time. It was coded with a vague, plausible descriptor from the bank. Electronic payment. I had likely assumed it was a charity donation or an annual subscription. I noted the date. It was 2 weeks after Marcus had helped me reorganize my home office. He had spent an afternoon here, complaining about my filing system, offering to make it more efficient. Access. He had gained uninterrupted access. I continued backward, then forward. The pattern was methodical, a withdrawal every 4 to 6 weeks. The amounts fluctuated but steadily grew. 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. The forged payee names were generic. Prime Services LLC, Apex Holdings, Inc. They were designed to be forgettable, to blend into a statement filled with legitimate bills. As I cross-referenced, another layer of theft emerged. 2 automatic deposits from my small pension fund, which I usually transferred manually to savings, were missing. The transactions were labeled transfer to checking. but the money had never arrived in my checking account. I traced the routing numbers on Robert's detailed report. The funds had been diverted to an external account I did not recognize. That added another $1,500. The total was now closer to $11,000. The cold clarity I had felt in Robert's office returned, colder still. This was not an impulsive act or a single desperate grab. It was a campaign. He had studied my habits, understood the timing of my deposits, and exploited the gaps in my oversight. He had used the trust I placed in him as a son to reconnoiter the terrain of my finances. I leaned back in my chair, the pen still in my hand. My eyes fell on a framed photograph on the corner of the desk. It was Marcus at 8 years old, holding a certificate for perfect penmanship. He had been so proud. I remembered the kitchen table, the lined practice paper, the intense focus on his small face. "Like this, Mom?" he'd ask, his hand gripping the pencil too tightly. I would guide his fingers, showing him the gentle slope. "Slow and steady," I'd say. "Make it your own." He had learned too well. He had made the signature his own tool. I pushed the photograph face down on the desk. Sentiment was a luxury I could not afford in this audit. The next day, I visited the lawyer, Helen Bray, as planned. Her office was efficient and quiet. I showed her the evidence. She confirmed what Robert and Jerry had said. This was felony forgery and theft. She outlined the criminal process dispassionately. Then, as I requested, she drafted a simple but legally binding repayment agreement. It stipulated the full amount owed, with a modest interest rate, to be paid in monthly installments over 3 years. It included a clause requiring him to provide proof of enrollment in a certified financial management course. A breach of any term would give me the immediate right to pursue legal action. It was a civil solution to a criminal problem. "I must advise you," Helen said, tapping the document, "that without the threat of criminal prosecution, this agreement's primary power is moral. It is enforceable in small claims court if he defaults, but the process is slower. The real leverage is his desire to avoid a felony record." "I understand," I said. "The leverage is the folder, and his perception of my willingness to use it." She nodded, a look of professional respect in her eyes. "Precisely." I left with 3 copies of the agreement. My next stop was the bank with my safe deposit box. I had rented it years ago for James's important documents. Now I added my own, the deed to the house, the title to my car, the original life insurance policies, my passport and social security card, Helen Bray's business card, and 1 copy of the repayment agreement. I locked the small metal drawer and placed the key on my key ring, separate from my house keys. Back home, I began the digital lockdown. I changed the password for my online banking, creating a long, complex string of characters I stored in a password manager on my phone. I did the same for my email, my utilities accounts, my credit card portals. I changed the security questions, making the answers nonsensical combinations only I would know. I canceled the old checks through the bank's automated system. Finally, I reviewed the household. I found the spare key he had, hidden under the false rock in the garden. I removed it. I considered changing the locks, but decided against it. A confrontation about a changed lock would come too soon. I needed him to feel secure in his access a little while longer. By the end of the week, the gathering of stones was complete. I had a full financial and legal dossier. I had secured my assets physically and digitally. I had a plan and a partner in Jerry. The scope of the betrayal was no longer a shocking revelation. It was a documented fact. The emotional hurt was now a concrete problem with a concrete solution. My resolve, which had hardened in the accountant's office, was now tempered steel. I was no longer just a mother wronged. I was a creditor. I was a prosecutor with evidence. I was a warden preparing a cell of consequences, the door of which only he could choose to open. The folder sat on my desk, thick and final. All that remained was for the debtor to come calling. And I knew, with a mother's weary certainty, that he would. His need and his assumption of my compliance would ensure it. I simply had to wait. The waiting was an active state. I maintained my routines. I went to the market. I attended my book club, where I listened to discussions of fictional betrayals with a new, detached perspective. I volunteered at the community center, helping children with their reading. The normality of these acts was a necessary discipline. Inside, I was a coiled spring, but on the surface, my life was a placid lake. The call came 10 days after my Sunday dinner with him. It was a Wednesday evening. I was in the kitchen, washing the single plate and cup from my supper. The phone on the wall rang. I dried my hands methodically before answering. "Hello." "Hey, Mom." Marcus's voice was bright, but there was a thin layer of strain beneath it, like a sheet of ice over moving water. "Marcus, hello, how are you?" "Good, good. Busy. Listen, I'm sorry to bother you at home." This was his standard preamble for asking for something. "It's no bother. What's on your mind?" He launched into a story. His car, the one that had been running perfectly, had developed a serious transmission issue. The repair estimate was astronomical. He had found a reputable used car, a great deal, but he needed to move quickly. His credit, he admitted with a practiced sigh of frustration, wasn't quite good enough for the full loan on his own. "So I was wondering," he said, his tone shifting to one of warm confidence, "if you could do me a huge favor. Just co-sign the loan. It's a tiny thing, really. You wouldn't be on the hook for anything. It just helps me get a better rate. With your credit, it'll be a breeze." I was silent for a count of 3. I looked out the window over the sink. The bird feeder was busy with finches. They fluttered and bickered, unaware of human treachery. This was the moment, the first test of the new boundaries. "A co-signature is a serious commitment, Marcus," I said, my voice even and gentle. "It means I am responsible for the debt if you cannot pay." I know, but come on, Mom. It's me. I've always been good for it. Remember that loan for the security deposit? Paid back right on time." He did not mention the $11,000 he had not paid back. "I do remember," I said, "but this is different. It's a larger amount tied to a depreciating asset. And to be honest, I've been reviewing my own finances lately. Things are a little tighter than I realized. I need to be very careful about any new obligations." The silence on his end was different now. The easy confidence evaporated. "What do you mean, tighter?" he asked, the brightness gone from his voice. "Just that. I've been going through my accounts, my retirement projections. I need to be more cautious." I kept my tone motherly and slightly weary. "I'm not saying no, necessarily, but I can't give you an answer today. I need to look at my budget again. Perhaps next week I'll have a clearer picture." "Next week." The words came out too fast, too sharp. He tried to soften them. "I mean, the car might be gone by then. This is a really urgent situation. My mechanic said my car could give out any day." "Then perhaps you should consider a less expensive option," I said, a note of mild suggestion in my voice. "Or a shorter-term rental while you save. There are always alternatives." "Mom, a cosign is just a signature. It doesn't cost you anything." The pushiness was emerging, the frustration bleeding through the charm. It was the sound of a man who was used to a door opening at his first knock, finding it unexpectedly locked. "It costs me my financial security if something goes wrong," I replied, still calm. "And as I said, my own situation requires prudence. I will review it and let you know." "Can't you just review it tonight? I can bring the paperwork over." His insistence was becoming palpable, a tangible thread of panic in the request. "I have plans tonight," I lied smoothly. "And I don't make financial decisions in a hurry. You taught me that, remember? Slow and steady wins the race." I used his own childhood mantra, the one I'd repeated to him during homework and piano practice. The irony was a private, bitter pill. He was silent again. I could hear his breathing, slightly quickened. He was scrambling. The easy mark was not behaving as scripted. "Okay," he said finally, the word tight. "Okay, please just look at it as soon as you can. This is really important." "I will, dear. I'll call you in a few days." We exchanged brief, strained goodbyes. I hung up the phone and remained standing at the window. The finches had scattered. The feeling in my chest was not triumph. It was a profound, weary sadness. His nervousness, his pushiness, they confirmed everything. This was not about a car. This was about a source of funds closing. He needed a new line of credit because the old, illicit one had been discovered and severed. His desperation was the first acknowledgement of my countermove, though he did not know the full scale of it yet. He felt the first tug of the net. He was off balance. The calm, strategic part of my mind noted this as useful data. The mother's heart ached at the confirmation of his continued manipulation. Even now, under pressure, his solution was to try to manipulate me further, to apply more pressure, to exploit the softness he still believed defined me. I finished drying the plate and put it away. I made a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. The plan was working. He was moving exactly as predicted. The request for a co-signature was a gift. It gave me the perfect, plausible reason for the financial lockdown he would soon encounter. It provided the context for the confrontation I was planning. I would wait 2 more days. Then I would call him back. I would tell him with regretful finality that after careful review I could not co-sign any loan. I would cite my age, my fixed income, my need for stability. His reaction to that would tell me even more. Then, and only then, would I issue the invitation for the dinner that would change everything. The table was being set, piece by piece. He was walking toward his own reckoning, and in his arrogance and need, he did not even feel the ground shifting beneath his feet. 2 days after Marcus's call, I met Jerry for our weekly walk in the park. It was a bright, crisp morning, the kind that feels full of promise. Jerry was waiting on our usual bench, her expression already set in lines of grim expectation. I had called her immediately after speaking with Marcus, so she was primed. "Well," she said as I approached, not bothering with a greeting, "did you tell him no?" "Not yet. I told him I needed to review my finances. I'll call him tomorrow with the refusal." Jerry stood, and we began walking along the paved path that circled the lake. "Good. And then what? You just wait for him to try something else." "Then I invite him to dinner," I said, "for a serious talk." Jerry stopped walking. She turned to face me, her hands on her hips. "Ellie, enough of this slow, quiet plan. You have the evidence, you have the lawyer, you have everything you need to ruin him. Why are you dragging this out? Call him over right now and slap that agreement in front of him. Or better yet, let's go to the police station today. I'll drive." Her anger was a live wire. It was the fury I had not allowed myself to feel, channeled through my best friend. I understood it. It was the desire for immediate, tangible justice. "Jerry, if I do that, if I go to the police, what happens?" I asked, my voice calm. "He gets charged with forgery and theft. He might go to jail. He definitely gets a record. He suffers the consequences he deserves." "And what happens to me?" I looked at her, waiting for her to follow the logic. "You get justice. You get your money back through restitution eventually." "Do I?" I shook my head slowly. "I get a son with a felony record. I get a family scandal that becomes public knowledge. I get years of court dates and probation officers and bitterness that will never heal. I become the mother who put her son in jail. That is the story forever. And the money? A court order doesn't guarantee payment. It just starts another long, adversarial process." Jerry's eyes flashed. "So you're just going to let him off? A repayment plan and a counseling course. That's a slap on the wrist for what he did." "I am not trying to destroy my son," I said, the words precise and deliberate. "I am trying to save my future, and maybe, just maybe, teach him. Destroying him doesn't restore what he took from me. It just creates a different kind of loss, a permanent one." "He didn't worry about permanent loss when he was forging your checks," she shot back. "I know, but I have to be the adult in this room, even if he is not." I started walking again, and after a moment she fell into step beside me, her stride agitated. "My goal is threefold, Jerry. First, to make myself completely financially secure so he can never do this again. That is almost done. Second, to recover the stolen money. Third, to impose a consequence that has a chance, however small, of making him a better person. Not for his sake, for mine. So I can look at myself and know I handled the worst betrayal of my life with clarity, not just rage." We walked in silence for a minute. The only sounds were the crunch of gravel under our shoes and the distant laughter of children on the playground. "He won't appreciate it," Jerry said finally, her voice lower. "He'll see it as weakness. He'll think he got away with it." "Perhaps," I conceded, "but the legal agreement is not weak. It is a binding contract. If he breaches it, the path to the police is clear and documented. He will know that. The lawyer made sure of it. This isn't a mother's forgiveness. It's a structured settlement with teeth. It's business. Jerry let out a long breath. I still think it's too soft. He deserves to be scared. He deserves to feel the ground fall out from under him. He already is scared, I said. His source of easy money is gone. His attempt to open a new line was blocked. He's nervous. He knows something has changed. When I present him with the folder with the copies of his forgeries, the ground will fall out from under him. But it will be in a controlled environment. I will be in control, not a judge, not a police officer, me. I stopped walking and turned to face her fully. The morning sun was behind her, casting her face in shadow. Jerry, you are my rock. Your rage is my rage, but I need you to trust my method. He's my son. This is how I do it, not with a hammer, but with a scalpel. It's how I've always handled things. Quietly. Thoroughly. She studied my face for a long moment, looking for doubt, for hesitation. She found none. Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. Okay, she said. Okay, Ellie, it's your show. What do you need me to do? Come to the house on the night of the dinner. Be in the living room, out of sight. I don't want to be alone with him when I do this. I need a witness, and I need my friend there. Of course I'll be there, she said instantly. Do you want me to record it? I considered it. No, a recording feels predatory. Your presence is enough. Your account, if it's ever needed, will be enough. We resumed our walk. The tension between us dissipated, replaced by a shared, grim purpose. When? Jerry asked. I'll call him tomorrow to refuse the cosign. I'll let that settle for a day. Then I'll invite him for dinner this Sunday. I'll tell him we need to talk about my financial situation, that I have some concerning news. That will bring him running. He'll think you're going to ask him for money, Jerry said, and a sharp, humorless laugh escaped her. The irony. Let him think that, I said. It will make the reality more effective. We completed our loop around the lake. The conversation shifted to practicalities. What time she should arrive, where she would wait, how she would signal if she felt I needed intervention. We planned it like a military operation, because that is what it was. A campaign to retake lost ground. As we parted at our cars, Jerry gave me a hard, quick hug. You're a better woman than I am, Ellie Vance. No, I said, just a different one, and right now I need to be this one. I drove home. The confrontation was no longer a distant possibility. It was scheduled. The pieces were in place. The secured accounts, the legal agreement, the evidence folder, the witness. All that was left was the performance. I felt a strange calm. The period of strategizing was over. The time for action had arrived. I would spend the next few days in final preparation, rehearsing my words, steeling my nerve. The mother who baked cobblers was putting herself away. On Sunday night, a different woman would be sitting at the head of the table. The next morning, I made the call. Marcus answered on the second ring, his voice expectant. Mom, did you get a chance to look things over? I did, Marcus. I kept my tone regretful but firm. And I'm afraid I can't co-sign the loan. My financial picture is tighter than I'd realized. I have to be very protective of my credit and my stability at this stage. I'm sure you understand. The silence was thick. You're saying no. The words were flat, devoid of their usual charm. I have to, for my own security, I'm sorry. I did not sound sorry. I sounded resolved. What does that mean, your own security? Is something wrong? His voice took on a probing, slightly anxious edge. That's what I need to talk to you about, I said, seizing the opening. I've been going through all my accounts, and I've discovered some things that concern me. I'd like you to come for dinner on Sunday. We need to have a serious discussion about it. I could use your perspective. The manipulation was elegant. I was inviting him in under the pretense of needing his help, appealing to his sense of importance. It was a lure he would not resist. My perspective, sure, of course. What kind of things? He was hooked, his personal frustration temporarily overshadowed by curiosity, and I suspected a fresh layer of alarm. I'd rather go over it in person. It's complicated. Come at 6. Okay, yeah, I'll be there. He agreed quickly, his mind already racing ahead, trying to puzzle out what I could have found. I hung up. The hook was set. Now I had to prepare the stage. Sunday morning arrived. I did not bake a cobbler. I prepared a simple meal: roasted chicken, potatoes, steamed broccoli. The act of cooking was mechanical, a series of tasks to keep my hands busy. My mind was elsewhere, running through sequences, anticipating responses. In the early afternoon, I set the table in the dining room. I used the plain white placemats, the everyday silverware. I set 2 places opposite each other. Then I went to my desk and retrieved the master folder. It contained the copies of the forged checks, Robert Meekum's summary, the bank statements with the highlighted withdrawals, and the lawyer's repayment agreement. I placed it on the table at my seat. I positioned my dinner plate directly on top of it. The folder was hidden but present. A foundation. I stood back and surveyed the setting. It looked like a normal dinner table. Nothing appeared out of place. The trap was invisible. Jerry arrived at 5:30, letting herself in through the back door as we'd arranged. She carried a tote bag with a book and a bottle of water, as if she were just stopping by. Her face was set in serious lines. "He's not here yet," I said. "Good, show me." I led her to the dining room. I pointed to my plate. "It's underneath." "And you're sure you want to do this during the meal, not after?" "During," I said. "After dessert. I want the normalcy of the meal first. I want him relaxed. I want the contrast to be sharp." Jerry nodded. "Where do you want me?" "The living room. You can see the dining room table from the armchair by the fireplace if the door is open. Leave it open an inch. I'll make sure it's not fully closed. And if I hear something that makes me think I should come in." "You'll know," I said. "If I raise my voice, that's your cue, but I don't plan to raise my voice." Jerry put a hand on my arm. "You're ice cold, Ellie. It's impressive and a little terrifying." "It's necessary," I replied. I felt neither impressive nor terrifying. I felt like a surgeon scrubbed for a difficult operation, focused solely on the procedure. I went to the kitchen to check on the food. Jerry settled in the living room with her book. The house was quiet, waiting. I used the remaining time to rehearse. I stood at the kitchen sink, looking at my reflection in the dark window, and spoke in a low, clear whisper. "Marcus, we need to talk about this." I imagined sliding the folder out from under the plate. "I know about the checks, all of them. Here are your options." I practiced the sentences until they felt neutral, devoid of the tremor that wanted to enter my voice. This was not an emotional outburst. It was a presentation of facts and consequences. At 6 o'clock precisely, headlights swept across the front window. A car door closed. I took a deep breath, smoothed my apron, and went to the front door. I opened it before he could knock. He stood on the porch, a bottle of wine in hand, his smile in place but not quite reaching his eyes. He looked at me, searching for something, a sign of distress, of need. "Mom, you okay? You sounded worried on the phone." "I'm fine," I said, stepping back to let him in. "Just some things on my mind. Thank you for the wine. Come in, dinner is almost ready." He stepped inside, his gaze sweeping the hallway, the living room entrance. He did not see Jerry. He hung his jacket, and I led him to the dining room. "Sit, please. I'll just get the platter." He took his seat, his back to the living room archway. He glanced at the table, at the 2 simple place settings. Nothing seemed amiss. He was in his familiar spot in his mother's house for a Sunday dinner. The stage was set. The actors were in place. The performance was about to begin. I turned and walked to the kitchen to bring in the food, my movements steady, my heart a steady, determined drumbeat in the quiet house. The dinner proceeded with an air of superficial normality. I brought in the platter of chicken and the bowls of vegetables. We served ourselves. Marcus made a show of complimenting the food, though his attention was clearly divided. He was waiting for me to begin this serious discussion. "How's work been?" I asked, taking a bite of potato. I needed the meal to progress. I needed him to settle into the rhythm. "Fine, the usual. That big pitch is next week." He took a sip of wine. "So, Mom, what's going on? You said you found some things in your accounts." "I did," I said, nodding slowly. "It's been quite an eye-opener, going through everything so thoroughly. I realized I hadn't been paying close enough attention. That's my fault." He waved a hand, a gesture of casual dismissal. "Everyone gets behind on paperwork. It's nothing to worry about. I can help you get it sorted." His tone was soothing, patronizing. He was slipping back into the role of the capable son rescuing his overwhelmed mother. "That's kind of you, but I've already taken steps." I ate another piece of broccoli. "I met with Robert Meekum." A slight pause, his knife tapped against his plate. "Your accountant, why?" "A routine review," I said, my voice mild. But it turned out to be anything but routine. I let that hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "How is your car situation? Did you find another option?" The change of topic seemed to startle him. No, not yet. Still looking. Let's not talk about my problems. Tell me what Meekum said." "He had some concerns. We'll get to it. Let's enjoy our dinner first." I took a sip of water. "Tell me more about this client pitch." He was visibly frustrated by my deflection, but he complied, launching into a detailed but distracted description of his work project. I listened, nodded in the right places, all the while watching him. The charm was still there, but it was fraying at the edges, pulled tight by his anxiety. He wanted to control the conversation, to steer it toward my supposed crisis, but I held the reins. We finished the main course. I stood and began to clear the plates. "I made a simple fruit salad for dessert," I said. "No cobbler tonight." "That's fine," he said, his impatience beginning to show. He remained seated as I carried the dishes to the kitchen. I could feel his eyes on my back. I returned with 2 small bowls of cut melon and berries. I placed one in front of him, then set my own bowl down at my place. Instead of sitting, however, I remained standing beside my chair. I looked down at the table, at my plate, which still covered the folder. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, his voice laced with a genuine note of confusion now. "I am," I said. My voice was clear and quiet in the still dining room. "But we need to have that talk now." I placed my hand on the edge of my dinner plate. I slid it slowly, deliberately, to the side, revealing the plain manila folder beneath. He stared at it. His expression was one of blank incomprehension. It was just a folder. It meant nothing to him yet. "I asked you here tonight because I discovered some discrepancies in my finances. My accountant helped me document them." I opened the folder. I did not sit down. I remained standing, looking down at the contents, then at him. The discrepancies were not errors, they were theft. His face changed. The confusion crystallized into something else, a wary alertness. "Theft? What are you talking about? Did someone hack your account?" "No." I lifted the first sheet from the folder, Robert Meekum's summary page. I did not hand it to him. I held it so he could see the bolded total. "Over the past 6 months, someone has forged my signature on checks from my personal account. $11,400. The color began to drain from his face. It was not a sudden rush, but a slow leaching, starting from his forehead and moving down his cheeks. His eyes dropped from the paper to the table, then back to my face. He said nothing. "I have copies of every forged check here," I continued, my tone conversational, as if I were explaining a recipe. "The signatures are very good, but they're forgeries. My accountant confirmed it. The bank has been notified." His mouth opened, then closed. He swallowed. "Mom, who would do that?" I ignored the question. I placed the summary page on the table and picked up the next sheet, a copy of the first forged check for $700. I laid it beside his dessert bowl. "This was the first one, dated last September, around the time you spent the afternoon reorganizing my office." He looked at the check, at the signature. His own face was now as pale as the paper. "You think I did this?" The words were a choked whisper. "I don't think I know." I laid down another copy, then another. I placed them in a row next to his place setting, a parade of his crime. "The amounts grew, the frequency increased. You became quite confident." "This is insane," he said, but his voice lacked force. It was a reflex, a default denial. His eyes were locked on the checks, on the undeniable evidence of his own handwriting, his own practice. "I have also secured all my assets," I said, still standing over him. "I have moved my funds to a new bank. I have changed all my passwords. I have placed my important documents in a safe deposit box. The avenue you have been using is permanently closed." He finally looked up at me. His eyes were wide, shocked. The charming facade was gone, stripped away, leaving raw panic. "You set me up this dinner. It was a trap." "It was a conversation," I corrected him. "One you have avoided having for 6 months. Now we are having it." I pulled out my chair and sat down. I picked up my fork and took a bite of the fruit salad. The sweet, cool taste was a sharp contrast to the bitterness in the room. I chewed slowly, watching him over the rim of my bowl. He stared at me, at the folder, at the checks laid bare beside his untouched dessert. The air in the room felt charged, thick with the unsaid. The mask was off. The performance of the loving son was over. What remained in his chair was a trapped man, finally seeing the walls of the cage he had built for himself. I took another bite, waiting for him to speak. He did not speak for a full minute. He stared at the checks, at the damning row of paper beside his bowl. I finished my fruit salad, placed the fork neatly on the empty dish, and waited. The silence was my weapon now. It forced him to sit in the reality I had constructed. "It wasn't like that," he said finally, the words emerging as a hoarse murmur. He did not look at me. "Explain it to me then. What was it like?" He shook his head, a quick, frustrated jerk. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. My job, my expenses. You have no idea what it's like. You're comfortable, you're settled. I was just bridging a gap. I was going to pay it back. By forging my signature," my voice remained level. "By creating fake companies to cash the checks. That is not borrowing, Marcus. That is theft and fraud. Those are legal terms with specific definitions." "I'm your son," he burst out, his head snapping up. His eyes were wide, pleading now, trying to shift the ground. "You wouldn't have understood. You would have said no like you did with the car loan. You don't get it. I needed it." "I am aware I am your mother. That fact is central to my profound disappointment." I folded my hands on the table. "And I do understand pressure. I understand it far better than you ever have. I raised you alone on a librarian's salary. I scrimped and saved for this house, for my retirement. I said no to myself for decades so I could eventually say yes to security. You did not need $11,000. You wanted it. There is a difference." He pushed his chair back from the table, the legs scraping loudly on the hardwood floor. He stood up, paced 2 steps away, then turned, his face flushed with a sudden, defensive anger. "So what? You brought me here to shame me, to show me how clever you are. You got your money back, you locked everything up. Fine, you win. Are you happy?" "I am not happy," I said, my voice cutting through his outburst. "I am resolved. There is a difference there, too. Sit down." He hesitated, breathing heavily, but he sat. The anger seemed to drain out of him as quickly as it had come, leaving him deflated. He looked at the checks again, and his shoulders slumped. "I have consulted a lawyer," I continued, as if his emotional display had been a minor interruption. "The evidence I have is sufficient for criminal charges. Forgery and theft of this amount is a felony. It carries potential prison time, certainly a permanent criminal record." His face, which had regained some color in his anger, went pale again. "You wouldn't." "I have not. Yet I have chosen a different path." I reached into the folder and withdrew the final document, the repayment agreement prepared by Helen Bray. I slid it across the table to him. "This is a civil agreement. It outlines the full amount owed with a reasonable interest rate. It requires monthly payments for 3 years. It also requires you to enroll in and complete a certified financial management course with proof sent to me. This agreement is legally binding. If you sign it and adhere to its terms, I will not pursue criminal action. The folder will remain with me and with my lawyer as insurance." He picked up the paper, his hands trembling slightly. He scanned it. This is humiliating." "Less humiliating than a felony conviction," I said. "This is your chance to make amends, not to me as your mother, but to me as your creditor. This is business now, Marcus. The family part of our relationship is suspended until this business is concluded." He looked from the agreement to me, his expression lost, almost childlike. "You're treating me like a stranger." "You treated me like a bank," I replied. "A bank with no security. Strangers have more respect for each other's boundaries. You have violated the most basic ones. Trust, honesty. So yes, for the purposes of this restitution, we are strangers bound by a contract." A sob escaped him, a raw, ugly sound. He dropped the paper and put his face in his hands, his body shook. I watched him cry. I felt a distant ache, the ghost of the mother's instinct to comfort. I did not move. The time for comfort was past. This was the consequence, and he needed to feel all of it. After a while, the sobs subsided into shaky breaths. He wiped his face with his napkin, avoiding my gaze. "What if I can't make the payments?" he asked, his voice thick. "Then I file this agreement with the court as evidence of the debt and pursue a civil judgment. And then I revisit the criminal option. The choice is binary: repayment and reform or the legal system. There is no third option of pretending this didn't happen." He nodded slowly, a gesture of utter defeat. He picked up the agreement again. "Can I have a pen?" I had one ready. I handed it to him. He hesitated, then scrawled his signature at the bottom of both copies. His hand was unsteady. The signature looked nothing like the confident forgeries. I took one copy back and placed it in the folder. I handed him the other. "Your first payment is due in 30 days. I will provide the account details. You will provide proof of your enrollment in a course within 2 weeks. Do you understand the terms?" "Yes," he whispered. "Good." I stood up. The meeting was over. "You should go now." He looked up startled. "Just like that?" "Just like that. We have nothing more to discuss tonight. The conversation is over. The agreement is in effect." I began to gather the copies of the checks, returning them to the folder. He stood awkwardly, his movements clumsy. He seemed unsure what to do with his body. He looked at the folder at me at the door. "Mom, I'm sorry." "I believe you are sorry you were caught," I said, closing the folder with a final snap. "Time will tell if you are sorry for what you did. Your actions going forward will be the only apology I will accept. Now, please get your coat and go." He walked to the hallway in a daze. I heard the rustle of his jacket, the click of the front door opening and closing. The house was silent again. A moment later, Jerry appeared in the dining room doorway. Her face was solemn. "I heard everything," she said. "You were formidable." I let out a long, slow breath. The rigid control I had maintained began to soften at the edges. A tremor started in my hands. I sat down again heavily. "It's done." "Are you all right?" She came and stood beside me. "I will be," I said, and I knew it was true. The reckoning was complete. The power was back where it belonged. The terms were set. The path forward, however painful, was clear. The mother had receded and the strategist had won. Now both could begin the work of finding out what, if anything, came next. Weeks later, on a Thursday morning, I sat in the bright reading corner of the community center. A small child named Chloe was curled in my lap, her head resting against my shoulder as I held the picture book open for the group of 4-year-olds gathered on the rug. My voice was steady and warm as I read about a lost kitten finding its way home. "The kitten looked up at the familiar door," I read, turning the page to reveal a colorful illustration. "And she knew she was safe." Chloe reached out a tiny finger to touch the drawing of the kitten. I finished the story, closed the book, and gently shifted her off my lap as the children's teacher, Ms. Alma, came to gather them for their next activity. The room filled with the cheerful chaos of small children rising and chattering. "Thank you, Ms. Ellie," Ms. Alma said with a smile. "Same time next week." "Absolutely," I said, standing and smoothing my skirt. I was gathering my purse and light sweater when I saw Jerry walk through the main doors of the center. She spotted me and made her way over, her expression relaxed. She had taken to meeting me here some mornings after my reading shift. "The adoring public awaits," she said, nodding toward the departing children. One little boy turned and waved at me. I waved back. "They're good for the soul," I said. We walked together out of the building and onto the sun-dappled sidewalk. The air was mild. It was an ordinary, peaceful morning. "So," Jerry asked as we strolled toward the small park adjacent to the center, "any news?" I knew what she was referring to. The first payment cleared. It was deposited into the designated account yesterday, right on schedule. Jerry nodded, her lips pressed together in a firm line of approval. "And the course?" "He emailed me the enrollment confirmation from the community college. The personal finance workshop starts next week. He forwarded the official receipt. My tone was matter-of-fact, reporting data. No excuses, no attempts to renegotiate. None. Our communication is now limited to logistical matters regarding the agreement. He calls me a leaner in the emails. There was no pain in stating this. It was simply the current condition. Jerry looped her arm through mine. How does that feel? I considered the question as we walked past a bed of late-blooming flowers. It feels accurate, I said. He is not my son right now. He is a debtor fulfilling a contract. That distance is necessary. It might always be there to some degree. I've made peace with that possibility. We found an empty bench and sat. Jerry pulled 2 apples from her tote bag and handed one to me. And you? Are you at peace? I took a bite of the apple. It was crisp and tart. I looked across the park, at the mothers pushing strollers, the old men playing chess, the predictable, gentle rhythm of community life. The heavy, cold weight that had settled in my chest the day of Robert Meekum's call was gone. In its place was a lighter, durable sense of order. I said. The house is mine again. The accounts are secure. The money is beginning to return. The person who betrayed me is accountable, not in the way I once dreamed of in my angriest moments, but in a way that I can live with. A way that leaves my dignity intact and maybe, in time, might help him find some of his own. You did it your way, Jerry said. Quietly, thoroughly, you protected your legacy. That was the word for it. Legacy. It wasn't just money or a house. It was the life I had built, the person I had chosen to be, a person of principle, of careful love, of strength. He had threatened to undermine all of that, to turn my love into a weakness to be exploited. I had reclaimed the narrative. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, finishing our apples. My phone, tucked in my purse, buzzed once. I did not reach for it immediately. It could wait. The sense of urgency, of impending crisis, had dissolved. What will you do now? Jerry asked. I will come here and read to the children on Thursdays. I will tend my garden. I will have lunch with you. I will monitor the repayment account. I will live my life. It sounded simple. It was an earned simplicity. Later, after Jerry had left for an appointment, I walked back through the community center to exit through the rear doors near the parking lot. I passed the open door of the art room. Inside, a group of seniors were painting. One of them, Mr. Evans, saw me and waved me in. Ellie, come see what I've done. I stepped inside. The room smelled of acrylic and coffee. Mr. Evans showed me his painting, a surprisingly vibrant landscape. We chatted for a few minutes about brush techniques. As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the dark glass of the fire exit door. I saw a woman with silver-gray curls standing straight. My face looked calm. My eyes were clear. I pushed the door open and stepped into the clear day. The sun was warm on my skin. I unlocked my car, got in, and placed my purse on the passenger seat. The phone buzzed again. This time I checked it. It was an email notification. The subject line read, "Course materials received." It was from Marcus. I opened it. The body of the email was brief, professional. It listed the textbooks for the financial workshop. It ended with, "Please confirm receipt. Regards, Marcus." I typed a one-word reply. "Confirmed." I sent it. I started the car and drove home. The house welcomed me with its familiar quiet. There was no lingering scent of a betrayal-covered dinner. There was just light and space and my own belongings in their proper places. I had done what I set out to do. I had protected my future. I had taught a hard lesson without destroying the student. I had found a way to be just without being cruel. The revenge was complete. It had never been about hurting him. It had been about healing the breach in my own security. That healing was done. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at my backyard, at the bird feeder I kept filled. A cardinal, bright red against the green, landed and began to eat. I watched it for a moment, then turned to put the kettle on for tea. My peace, like my home, was secure. It was enough.